The most spiritually awakened among us are often the loneliest people you'll ever meet. Surprising, isn't it? We're sold this idea, packaged as neatly as the latest smartphone, that spiritual enlightenment brings nothing but bliss, connection, and harmony. Yet the reality can hit harder than a Monday morning alarm after a 3-day weekend. Like the tallest redwood in a California forest, the awakened individual stands out, reaching heights others can't quite comprehend, feeling winds others never experience. This elevation comes at a cost, one that Instagram spirituality never showcases in its perfectly filtered posts. Have you ever noticed how the most conscious people often retreat from the incessant social chatter that so defines modern life? How they seem almost allergic to small talk at office parties and neighborhood barbecues. There's a profound reason for this, one that goes far beyond mere introversion. In many societies, particularly in America, we've built an entire culture around fitting in. From high school cliques to corporate dress codes to suburban conformity, we're taught that belonging means sameness. We measure success by how well we match the standard template: a college degree, a steady job, a 401k, a picket fence, 2.5 kids, and a golden retriever. The so-called American dream leaves precious little room for the spiritually divergent. Yet, what if this loneliness isn't quite what it appears to be? Consider an eagle soaring high above the landscape. From the ground, it seems isolated, set apart in its solitary flight. But from the eagle's perspective, it sees connections invisible to those below. The patterns of rivers feeding into lakes, the movement of life across forests and fields, a grand design that can only be witnessed from above. Is the eagle truly lonely, or is it simply experiencing a different, more expansive kind of connection? This brings us to the first paradox of awakening. The more deeply you truly see, the less understood you feel by those who haven't seen what you have. The deeper your understanding grows, the more difficult it becomes to engage in the surface-level conversations that make up 95% of human interaction in our rushed, achievement-oriented society. Have you ever felt like an alien at your own family Thanksgiving dinner, as conversations revolve around consumer purchases, neighborhood gossip, and sports statistics, while the deeper questions of existence remain untouched? Have you sensed that hollow feeling after scrolling through your LinkedIn feed, watching people celebrate corporate milestones that, in the cosmic scale, ultimately mean very little? The awakened person is like someone who has stepped outside the movie theater, realizing that what everyone is so emotionally invested in is merely images projected on a screen. How do you relate to those still crying and cheering at the movie without sounding condescending? How do you share what you've seen without diminishing others' experiences? And here lies our second paradox. The moment of true awakening simultaneously connects you to everything while seemingly disconnecting you from everyone. We fear this loneliness because we're conditioned by our hyper-social culture to equate aloneness with failure. If you're not constantly surrounded by friends posting your hangouts on social media, we're told something must be wrong with you. The suburban dream promises community, but often delivers isolation behind identical doors. Corporate America promises teamwork, but frequently fosters competition. Our fear of being alone often drives us to accept connection on almost any terms, even the shallowest ones. The awakened person stands at a fascinating threshold, seeing both the profound unity of all existence and the practical separation that defines our daily human experience. They live between worlds, and this between place can indeed feel like the loneliest spot in the universe. But here's where our journey takes its first unexpected turn. What if this perceived loneliness isn't loneliness at all, but rather the birth pang of a deeper form of connection that our socialized minds simply don't yet have the vocabulary to understand? What if the awakened aren't condemned to loneliness, but are instead pioneering a new way of being, one that feels like loneliness only because we lack better words to describe it? Have you ever felt profoundly alone after a moment of deep insight or spiritual awareness? What was that experience like for you? Feel free to share in the comments below. Where does this feeling of isolation upon awakening truly originate? It's worth exploring how deeply our consciousness, particularly in America, is constructed around a fundamental misunderstanding of what connection actually means. Think of the mighty oak in your neighborhood park. To casual observation, it stands alone, a singular entity. Yet beneath the surface, its roots intertwine with mycelial networks, connecting it to every other plant in that ecosystem. It's simultaneously individual and collective. Similarly, our perception of separation is merely the visible surface of a deeper reality of connection. From our earliest school days, we're subtly trained in the art of separation. Remember those classroom competitions? Gold stars for individual achievement? The desperate race for valedictorian? The college application process that often pitted you against your closest friends? This isn't accidental. It's the deliberate architecture of a society built on the myth of the self-made individual. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps. It's every man for himself. Winners never quit, and quitters never win. These aren't just motivational posters in your high school guidance counselor's office. They're the mantras of a culture that has forgotten its fundamental interconnectedness. The average American spends more time looking at their phone than making eye contact with other humans. We live in what sociologists call networked individualism, technically more connected than ever before, yet experiencing unprecedented levels of loneliness. We might have 500+ LinkedIn connections, but struggle to name 5 people we could call in a 3 a.m. crisis. Close your eyes for a moment. Feel the rhythm of your breathing. Notice how the air moves in and out without your conscious effort. This very same air has cycled through countless other beings. With each breath, you're in intimate communion with the world around you. You've never truly been separate. You've only been taught to perceive yourself that way. When someone awakens to this deeper reality, when they suddenly see through the carefully constructed illusion of separation, they find themselves in an awkward position. It's like someone who realizes they've been in a reality TV show while everyone else still thinks it's their normal life. The awakened person notices the absurdity of office politics, while everyone else treats it with deadly seriousness. They see the comedy in status seeking, while their neighbors compete for the newest luxury SUV. They recognize the emptiness of achievement without deeper meaning, while their college classmates chase promotions and prestigious addresses. American culture particularly struggles with this because our national mythology revolves around individual achievement: the cowboy riding alone into the sunset, the entrepreneur building an empire from a garage, the self-made millionaire who did it my way. Our heroes are rarely the connectors, the bridge builders, the community weavers. They're the standouts, the exceptions, the ones who rise above. Is it any wonder then that awakening, which reveals the illusion of this very separateness, creates such cognitive dissonance? You've spent decades building your identity around standing out, only to discover that standing out was never truly the point. Like waves in the ocean suddenly recognizing they're made of water, the awakened person sees both their individuality and their inseparability from the whole. But try explaining that at your high school reunion when everyone's comparing job titles and vacation photos. The isolation that follows awakening isn't caused by the awakening itself. It's caused by the tension between your new perception and the old paradigm still operating around you. It's like suddenly seeing in color while everyone else still sees in black and white. How do you describe red to someone who has never seen it? This isolation is particularly acute in American society because we often lack the communal frameworks that other cultures maintain. We've traded extended family compounds for single-family homes with privacy fences. We've replaced intergenerational wisdom sharing with YouTube tutorials. We've substituted community rituals with solitary Netflix binges. The awakened person feels this absence acutely. They hunger for authentic connection in a world obsessed with its appearance. They seek depth in conversations designed to remain shallow. They long to discuss the mystery of existence at dinner parties focused on property values in school districts. Think back to a moment when you felt truly seen and understood by another person, when you didn't have to edit your thoughts or dumb down your insights, when you could speak your truth without fear of judgment or misunderstanding. How rare are those moments in your daily life? When did you first realize that much of what passes for connection in our society is actually just shared distraction? What prompted that awareness? Share your experience in the comments. What would Alan Watts say about this apparent condemnation to loneliness that awaits the awakened? He'd likely start with a gentle laugh, that characteristic chuckle that acknowledges the cosmic joke we're all part of. The feeling of loneliness, he might say, is simply the ego's panic at discovering it doesn't exist in the way it thought it did. Consider the nature of water. A single drop, when separated from the ocean, appears distinct and isolated. It has boundaries, an individual existence. Yet when returned to the ocean, does it become lonely? Or does it recognize its true nature was oceanic all along? The drop doesn't disappear. It expands to recognize what it always was. Similarly, awakening isn't about becoming isolated. It's about recognizing you were never the separate entity you believed yourself to be. The loneliness that follows isn't the pain of separation, but the growing pains of expansion. Like a butterfly emerging from its chrysalis, there's discomfort in the transition. The caterpillar's body literally dissolves into imaginal cells before reforming into something entirely new. From the caterpillar's perspective, this transformation might feel like death. Yet what follows isn't extinction, but liberation. This is the essence of Wu Wei, effortless action that flows from alignment with one's true nature. The awakened person isn't fighting to connect. They're allowing artificial barriers to connection to simply dissolve. Imagine a clearing in a dense forest. The trees stand apart, reaching skyward individually. Yet beneath them, hidden from casual observation, their roots form an intricate dance of interconnection. They share nutrients, communicate through chemical signals, and support one another through underground mycorrhizal networks. What appears as separation above ground is revealed as profound connection below. Take a moment now to simply be present with this idea. Don't rush to understand it intellectually. Feel into the possibility that what you perceive as isolation might actually be an invitation to a deeper form of connection. In American culture, we've become experts at what Watts called skin-encapsulated egos, the belief that we end at our physical boundaries. Our education system reinforces this by treating students as separate learning units. Our corporate structures reinforce it by fostering competition over collaboration. Our social media reinforces it by encouraging personal branding over authentic sharing. The lonely, awakened person isn't suffering from too much awareness, but from straddling two worlds, seeing the deeper connection while still operating in a society structured around separation. They're speaking a new language while everyone around them clings to the old one. This brings us to another of Watts' essential insights, our oneness with all that is. The awakened person feels lonely not because they're truly separate from others, but because they see so clearly how artificial our separations are. They've glimpsed the underlying unity that makes all our careful boundaries seem like lines drawn in water, temporarily visible but ultimately illusory. When you truly see that there is no other, that the person you're speaking to is, in the deepest sense, not separate from you, how do you maintain the polite fictions that social interaction often depends upon? How do you engage in casual debate when you realize that you and your opponent are like the left and right hands of the same body? Like wildflowers spreading across an open field, we appear separate above ground while sharing the same soil and responding to the same rain and sunshine. Our individuality isn't negated by this connection, it's contextualized and enriched by it. This is the revelation that can feel so isolating at first. The separate self you thought you were protecting and promoting all these years doesn't exist in the way you believed. And American society, perhaps more than any other, is built almost entirely around this misunderstanding. From following your dreams, to making something of yourself, to leaving your mark, our entire cultural narrative assumes a separate self that must carve out meaning in an indifferent universe. When you awaken to the reality that you are not separate from the universe, that you are what Watts called the universe experiencing itself, the entire framework collapses. This collapse can feel like isolation because you've lost the common ground that connected you to others. But it's actually an invitation to establish connection on entirely new terms. Terms based on recognition rather than transaction, on sharing rather than comparison, on presence rather than performance. Have you had an awakening moment when you suddenly saw through the illusion of your separate self? How did that change your relationships with others around you? Share your experience below. We return to our original question. Are the awakened condemned to loneliness? The answer, which may indeed shock you, is both yes and no, but it's the no that contains the greater truth. The initial isolation that often follows awakening is not a permanent condition, but a transitional space, a necessary clearing that makes room for authentic connection. Like the sky that holds both storms and sunshine, the awakened consciousness creates space for a completely new way of relating. The awakened person is not condemned to loneliness, but invited to pioneer a new form of community, one based not on shared beliefs, cultural backgrounds, or social status, but on shared awareness. Think of how clouds move across the vast blue sky. They form, shift, dissipate, sometimes gathering into powerful storms, sometimes dispersing into wisps so faint they barely register. Yet the sky remains, holding all of these transformations without itself being changed by them. This is the awakened mind, spacious enough to hold connection and solitude, similarity and difference, without being defined by either extreme. In practical terms, this means the awakened person gradually finds their way to others who share this expanded perspective, not because they're desperately seeking escape from loneliness, but because similar frequencies naturally resonate together. This isn't the desperate networking of a LinkedIn connection request or the strategic socializing of a corporate happy hour. It's the natural magnetism of authentic presence recognizing itself in another. The great irony, the shocking truth promised in our title, is that only by fully accepting the possibility of lifelong loneliness can the awakened person become truly available for genuine connection. By releasing the anxious grasping for belonging that characterizes so much of American social life, the desperate need to fit in, be liked, stay relevant, maintain status, they create the very conditions that allow real intimacy to flourish. As Alan Watts might put it, when you're not trying to grab hold of the water, it flows over your open hand. This represents a radical departure from the American obsession with belonging. From high school cafeterias to country club memberships, from political affiliations to brand loyalties, we've structured our entire social reality around who's in and who's out. The awakened person steps outside this binary entirely, not rejecting community, but reimagining it. Consider the difference between a manicured suburban lawn and a wildflower meadow. The lawn achieves its uniform perfection through constant control, cutting, edging, fertilizing, weeding. The meadow achieves its dynamic beauty by allowing each plant to express its nature while remaining part of the whole. The awakened community resembles this meadow, diverse expressions of life coexisting without forced conformity. This is what Buddha nature points to, the recognition that our essential wholeness doesn't need to be achieved, but simply uncovered. The loneliness that initially follows awakening isn't evidence of failure, but of fidelity to this deeper truth. It's the natural consequence of no longer being able to pretend that superficial connections satisfy our deeper longing for recognition. In today's America, with its political polarization, digital distraction, and an epidemic of loneliness despite hyperconnectivity, the awakened person offers something revolutionary: presence without agenda. In a culture obsessed with optimization and outcome, simply being fully available to this moment and whoever is in it becomes a radical act. The journey from awakening through apparent isolation to authentic community mirrors America's own frontier mythology, but with an essential difference. Rather than conquering new territory, the awakened person pioneers new ways of being present in territory we've always occupied but rarely fully inhabited. The workplace becomes not just a venue for productivity, but for presence. Family gatherings become not just obligations, but opportunities for genuine encounter. Even standing in line at the grocery store becomes a chance to recognize the shared humanity that transcends our surface differences. This is the integration that follows awakening, not a retreat from society, but a more conscious engagement with it. Not a rejection of American life, but a transformation of how we inhabit it. Not an escape from relationships, but a deeper investment in their authentic potential. The shocking truth is that awakening doesn't condemn you to loneliness, it liberates you from the fear of it. And when you're no longer arranging your entire existence around avoiding loneliness, you become capable of connections of extraordinary depth and authenticity. Like the silence between musical notes that allows the composition to exist, the space of aloneness that the awakened person embraces becomes the very foundation for meaningful connection. Not despite their awakening, but precisely because of it. Which insight from this exploration resonated most deeply with you? Was it the recognition of how our cultural conditioning shapes our fear of isolation? The possibility that what feels like loneliness might actually be expansion? Or the paradox that accepting aloneness creates the conditions for genuine connection? Share your thoughts below.